Let me say something most people won't say to your face. You are not as confident as you could be. You are not as sharp as you need to be. And somewhere deep down you already know it, which is exactly why you clicked on this video. Most people will go their entire lives blaming their circumstances, their upbringing, their bad luck, their toxic ex, their unsupportive family, and they will die without ever taking full ownership of who they are and what they're capable of. Machiavelli had zero patience for those people. He was a Florentine diplomat, a political philosopher, and one of the most honest and most hated thinkers in history. His book, The Prince, was banned by the Pope. His name became a synonym for ruthlessness. But here's the truth. Machiavelli was hated because he refused to lie. He looked at power, human nature, and the real world, not the world people pretended existed, and he wrote it all down. And today I'm going to hand you those lessons and challenge you to actually apply them. Not to manipulate people, not to crush your enemies, but to build the kind of confidence that makes you someone who cannot be ignored, cannot be pushed around, and cannot be stopped. This is going to get uncomfortable. Good. Uncomfortable is where growth lives. Let's go. Machiavelli opens. The Prince with an idea that would get him cancelled today. The gap between how people live and how they ought to live is so wide that anyone who abandons what is done for what should be done will ruin himself. Translation, stop living in a fantasy, and I want to be really direct with you here, because this is the section most people will nod along to and then completely ignore. You have a story you tell yourself. Maybe it's, I'd be successful if I'd had better opportunities. Or, I'm just not a confident person. That's just who I am. Or, I've tried things before and they didn't work out. So why bother? These stories feel like explanations. They're actually excuses, and Machiavelli would call them what they are: the weapons you use against yourself. Real confidence does not come from positive self-talk. It does not come from a vision board. It comes from brutal, unflinching self-assessment. It comes from looking at your life with the same cold clarity you'd use to assess a stranger, and deciding to act on what you actually see, not what you wish you saw. Here's a question that will sting if you're being honest. What is one thing in your life right now that you know is not working, but you keep pretending might turn around on its own? A job you hate but won't quit. A relationship you've outgrown but you're too scared to leave. A habit that's draining you that you keep saying you'll fix next month. A dream you keep calling a goal but never actually work toward. Machiavelli says the first act of a powerful person is to see clearly. Not optimistically, not pessimistically, clearly, because you cannot fix a problem you refuse to look at, and you cannot build a real life on a foundation of stories you tell yourself to stay comfortable. Stop outsourcing your self-awareness. Stop waiting for someone else to show you what's wrong. You already know. The only question is whether you have the guts to admit it to yourself. Here's one of the most powerful ideas Machiavelli ever wrote. And it is the exact opposite of what most people want to hear. He described fortune, luck, fate, circumstance, as a river. When it floods, it wipes everything out. But the person who dug channels and built levees before the flood doesn't get destroyed. They direct it. They use it. Then he drops this line: fortune is a woman, and it is necessary in order to keep her down to beat her and struggle with her. Strip the 16th century language. The message is raw and real. Life does not reward the polite. It does not reward the patient. It does not reward the person who waits for a sign, waits for the right moment, waits until they feel ready. It rewards the person who moves. I want you to think about this honestly. Think about every major opportunity in your life that slipped through your fingers. The job you didn't apply for because you thought you weren't qualified enough. The person you never approached. The business idea you sat on for 3 years until someone else built it. The hard conversation you kept delaying until the relationship quietly died. How many of those did you lose because the timing was actually bad? And how many did you lose because you were afraid? Be honest. Machiavelli watched kingdoms fall. He watched intelligent, talented men lose everything. Not because they lacked resources or ability, but because they hesitated at the critical moment. They waited one day too long. They let fear put on a suit and call itself wisdom. That's what most people do. They call their hesitation being strategic. They call their inaction being careful. They call their fear not being impulsive. And meanwhile, someone less talented but more decisive is taking the thing they wanted. You are not waiting for the right moment. You are hiding. And every day you hide, the version of yourself that could have existed gets a little further out of reach. At some point, the gap between who you are and who you could have been becomes the story of your life. Don't let that be your story. This is where Machiavelli gets into something that most people never figure out about themselves. And it explains why so many smart, capable people still can't seem to command respect. He says that to survive and thrive, a person must embody two animals, the lion and the fox. The lion is raw power, conviction, the willingness to stand your ground, to make your presence felt, to not back down when things get hard. When the lion speaks, people listen, not because of what it says, but because of the force behind it. The fox is intelligence, strategy, the ability to read a room, adapt, see 3 moves ahead and avoid traps the lion would walk straight into. Most people are stuck at 1, and they have convinced themselves that's just their personality, as if personality is something that happens to you rather than something you build. The all-lion person charges at every obstacle. Bold, relentless, confrontational, but predictable and trap-prone. They mistake aggression for strength and wonder why people stop respecting them despite how hard they push. The all-fox person is clever and calculating, but never fully commits. They study every angle, hedge every bet, and end up so cautious that they never actually build anything that matters. They mistake passivity for patience and wonder why nothing ever moves. Real confidence, the kind that makes you genuinely formidable, requires both. And here is the hard truth about why most people don't have both. One of the animals scares you. The lion scares you because aggression and direct confrontation feel dangerous. Maybe you got punished for it growing up. Maybe someone told you that strong people were threatening or arrogant, so you suppressed it. The fox scares you because strategy and restraint feel manipulative. Maybe you pride yourself on being authentic and direct, and calculated thinking feels like a betrayal of that. So you never developed it. But let me reframe both of those stories right now. Being strong is not the same as being cruel. Having edges, standards, and the ability to hold your ground is not aggression, it is self-respect. And being strategic is not the same as being deceptive. Knowing when to act, when to wait, and how to read a situation is not manipulation. It is intelligence. The person who refuses to pick up half their tools will always lose to the person who uses all of theirs. Which animal are you avoiding? And what are you telling yourself to justify avoiding it? Because there is a version of you on the other side of developing both, and that version is significantly more powerful than the one you're settling for. Machiavelli had a concept called virtù, and it is almost the opposite of what we mean. When we say virtue today virtue means being kind, humble, gentle, agreeable, nice, and there is nothing wrong with those qualities in their proper place. But Machiavelli's virtù meant excellence, capability, the strength of will to act decisively and effectively in the real world, To do what needs to be done when it needs to be done without flinching. He was not impressed by nice. He was impressed by capable. And here is where I need to be blunt, because this is the section people resist the most. Excessive niceness is a coping mechanism. Full stop. It is what people do when they are terrified of conflict, terrified of rejection, terrified of being perceived as difficult or demanding. They smile when they should speak. They agree when they should push back. They give when they should hold a boundary. They absorb mistreatment and tell themselves they're being the bigger person. It is not kindness. It is fear wearing the costume of virtue. Machiavelli watched what happened to leaders who were too eager to be liked, too conflict-averse to make the hard calls, too merciful at the wrong moments, too desperate for approval to project authority. They got eaten alive. Not because the world is uniquely cruel, but because people, consciously or not, will walk as far into a space as you allow them to. If you have no edges, people will walk all the way in. And then they'll tell their friends there's room. Now here is the reframe. Because I don't want you to hear this as be a jerk. That's not it. Being genuinely strong is one of the kindest things you can be. When you have real standards and real limits, when you are honest about what you will and will not tolerate, you stop being a source of confusion. The people around you know where they stand. That clarity is not coldness. That clarity is respect, for them and for yourself. Like, subscribe, and comment which lesson hit the hardest. It's time to stop being anything less than the king you are.